Today on the BVA Boardroom podcast, we have Mayor Robert Simison of Meridian. Meridian is the second largest city in Idaho and has been growing like crazy. Mayor Simison was elected as the 26th mayor of Meridian in 2019, following Mayor DeVeerd. Mayor Simison began his service at the city in 2007 and was a longtime chief of staff to Mayor Tammy. Prior to that, he worked in D.C. For 10 years. Mayor Simison has continued the tradition of being really focused on the families in Meridian and has done a great job. And it was really great catching up with him. Hope you enjoy the podcast. Mayor Simison. Welcome, Mayor.
Well, thanks for having me.
It's great to see you. Let's start with the most important update. Ruptured your Achilles.
I did. Just been not that long ago, February 2nd, skiing. Ruptured my Achilles, and here we are in the start of April, and I'm getting around pretty good right now.
Hey, listen, when I saw you last time, I said, welcome to the club because you were in your boot, and I've ruptured my Achilles. But it's only Mayor Simison and Aaron Rodgers that I know of that you're already out of your boot.
Yes.
7 weeks in, you come walking in today, barely have a limp.
Yeah, well, I attribute it to a great medical care and great PT help down from Rock and Armor right there at Pine in Meridian.
Yeah.
And yeah, they've been treating me right and not pushing me too far, but also challenging me, so it's great.
Who did your surgery?
Dr. Hiroshi at St. Al's.
Wow.
So.
Must have done a great job because I'm telling you, that's really good. That I remember I couldn't wait to get out of that boot, but it was a lot longer than 7 weeks.
Yeah, and I held it back a few days, but I also, the first day out, I probably overdid it a little too much.
Yeah.
And probably should have had it on a little bit, just, helps. But the swelling comes up a little bit, goes down at night, and start over the next day and just keep going. I'm committed to get back on the ski hill by next year.
That's great. So you're a big skier. Let's talk a little bit about, I know you're a big skier, and that's how you injured your leg, but it's a big family deal for you, right?
It is. I started skiing when I was young. My family didn't do it, but I fell in love with the sport. But as I matured, I knew it's the one thing I wanted as a family adventure for us. And I really stayed committed to that, taught my kids, put them in lessons, taught them, skied with them. We still ski together as a family when we go. And my youngest gets to the point where he wants to go off with some friends, and that's okay. But he's still not afraid to ski with Dad. And when I hurt myself, and I had my kids that they went skiing without me, and that's when I knew I actually did it right. That I didn't put it too much on them. They actually enjoy skiing enough to do it when I'm not asking them to do it, and so I'm pretty excited about that for the future. If I pass that along to my family, and we've done some great things. We skied at all the major Idaho ski resorts as a family over a 4-year period where we traveled the state and did that, and those will be those memories we look back on and enjoy.
You have those kids. The time goes by so quickly, right? You have them captured. The drive there, the drive back, the lunches there on the ski hill. It's a really nice activity. Well, Mayor, you've been the mayor since 2019.
That's when the election was. Took office, started 2020.
Yeah, so right before COVID, which we can talk a little bit about that. But I think sometimes we assume that people know your background and history. If you wouldn't mind, talk a little bit about your family and your history before you became mayor.
Yeah, so family, we always talk about what generation Idahoan are we. Technically, I'm the first generation, but my grandparents moved here. My father, or my grandfather, got some property through. He was in the military and got deeded some property outside of the Paul area, and so family farm brought us to Idaho from Illinois. My mom came; she was already born by the time we got here, and so I came along afterwards. And my mom was the black sheep. She left the area. She went over to Pocatello. While the rest of the family stayed in the Burley Paul area during that time frame, and so I grew up in Pocatello. Loved it over there, in between Pocatello and Ecom, and so a little bit cityfied, a little bit country in that context. Pocatello was the big city. Ecom was where I went to elementary school and played my sports growing up. And then when I hit 18 and I was looking for something different, Whitman College is where I went and spent my time over in Walla Walla. It's 8 hours away from Pocatello, 4 hours away from Boise where I had family, so it's far enough, but not too far. And loved my education there, and it's really where I grew into my love for government was in college, which is, you know, separate story. But then after college, I came back to Boise and settled in for a year. But one of my good friends from college, he was out in D.C. and he said, "You really need to be here. This is you're the guy that this is all about for." And so I left and went out to D.C. for 10 years, where I worked on Capitol Hill, worked for a congressional committee, House Committee on Energy and Commerce, made some lifelong friendships. Uh, was kind of in the process side of government, which is one of the three P's, as I like to call them. And really enjoyed my time there, working for that committee. Back when Congress actually, I like to say, functioned. We work collaboratively to find policy solutions to issues that the country was facing. And it was also unique because it was right after the Republicans took control of Congress from Democrats for the first time in 40 years. So it was a very unique time. I wasn't there right at those first 2 years, but to be there through that conversation was a pretty amazing time frame. And then me and my wife moved to the area after we had our second child and felt like this is where we need to be. Her parents had just located to the area, so we had the grandparents here built in, and I started working for the city of Meridian. I thought I was going to be working in downtown Boise, but Mayor Tammy had an opening in her office, and I just answered a thing in the paper, and the next thing I know, I was working for the city of Meridian. I mean, part of a ride of a city that was transforming.
What year was that? What year did you start?
I started with the city in 2007.
2007. Wow.
So it's right at they had already experienced their first growth period, really since 1993. But 2002, 3, 4, 5, they saw a lot of growth. Yeah. I came on right as, I bought my house in the area in 2007, and by 2 months after that, the crash hit. And that's when I started working for the city of Meridian. So I actually came in when it kind of slowed down a little bit, and they were just trying to get their feet underneath them still, growing and evolving as staff, as what the future of the city looks like. And it was a great opportunity for me to grow as a person and to grow with the city, just like Mayor Tammy was growing with the city in the same way. She was the first full-time mayor. People don't realize it's not that long ago that we didn't have a full-time mayor. And it's pretty amazing.
Couple of follow-up questions, because then it gets into your mayor race. But in Congress, it's interesting. Monday night I was with Congressman Simison and Butch and a couple other people, and just listening to them talk about the good old days. Mm-hmm. It's kind of sad, because these people have been around for a while and they know the way Congress used to function. And it just doesn't function like it used to. They'll talk about these meetings where it was really policy driven, and they would sit down and say, okay, what do we need to do that's best for the American people? Probably not going to agree on 100% of things, but how are we going to get good legislation? How are we going to get to a good policy that survives us, that really helps the American people? And they talked for a long time about that. And then it's like the good old days. It just doesn't exist anymore. You were there in the good old days, so that's what you remember about the committee. And
absolutely, there were always partisan issues that you weren't going to agree on, but what it would be is you let the other side have a vote, state their position, and people could take their vote, but then you would still work together on getting the best thing for the American public that you could, within the parameters of what people thought was the right thing. They didn't agree, but yeah, it was definitely a different time. And I've always found the relationship with people on the other side of the issue. I don't want to say the other side of the aisle. The other side of the issue are where you have the best conversations. Is where you learn. It's where you grow. And whether that was when I was in college, talking to people who were coming from a different environment and we just didn't see eye to eye, and it was great, or in Congress. But I had a great time there. I loved watching things, the process occur. But it was, I don't want to attribute it all to this, but what was explained to me, it's really, when Newt Gingrich came in, he really wanted to have a different type of Congress. And he used to see, congressmen and women interacting with their families, and building relationships. And there was a general understanding that when the Republicans took over, leave your families at home. If you didn't create those connections, you maybe wouldn't work together on solutions. Now, I don't want to blame this all on that philosophy where we are today, but a lot of people do kind of look back to that point in time to say that's where Congress really changed. That's where relationships changed.
Well, you'll hear the good old day discussions. And what I found, even if we started a place where we have policy discussion, and we're on different sides of, but if we sit down and say, no, why do you believe what you believe on this policy, and what do you think it should be? Here's what do we have in common, and what do we need to work through? You pretty quickly get down to the two or three issues.
Mm-hmm.
If I start by saying I can't stand you, I don't like you personally because you might see the world different than I do, it kind of ends there. And then I think you have this layer of politician, especially back there, that's there for, I don't know what they're there for. Entertainment, publicity, popularity. I don't know what they're there for, but it's certainly not to talk about solutions. It's not to talk about how do we get good policy. And that's why I think we have such great big issues that are facing the United States of America that are really not being addressed. I mean, you can sit and talk about, entitlements and just the budget and what that looks like in 10 years, 20 years. Talk about immigration. I mean, these are big things that have solutions, but no one's working on them right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I was there, some of the things, one of the things that got done before I got there was the Telecommunications Act of 1996. But when I go through and I look at all the things that happened, all the big pieces of legislation, you could talk about it, and it may take you 10 years before you figure out who is right or wrong on issues. And if they were, then you could go back and try to fix them.
Yeah.
But when you just refuse to engage and talk, and you could never even get to a solution, you never have an idea of what you think is the right way to do things, has an option or not. But,
I hope they figure it out. Well, so you talked a little bit about 2007, City of Meridian, and right post the last kind of Great Recession was one of the start of it, really, right? Because you think about Lehman Brothers going down, and then the aftermath, and then kind of working through that, and then you're there for 12 years then before you were elected mayor. So 12 years of service. I think Tammy also grew up in that. First full-time mayor, incredible leader, great legacy of what she did there. What were some things you learned from her as you kind of watched her, lessons learned as she kind of led the city?
yeah, some of it was very pointed in the context of, she was she find your why, find your passion, and then that's really the type of leader she was. And so she was very purposeful in a lot of those elements that she really tried to talk to others about, whether she's going to go talk to a group of kids or, talk to people that are graduating older in life. It was really kind of focused on that passion and that desire and that belief of, improving your community and your why. It was kind of interesting, as when I came into the position, there was a lot of stuff that I didn't realize she was doing, that I didn't pick up on until,
You were the guy.
in COVID, and and how she was interacting with employees and the relationship that she had built with employees. Because as her chief of staff, we never sat down and said, okay, what's our employment engagement strategy, her and I. She may already had it in her head about what she wanted to do and how she wanted to achieve it, and she just did it.
Yeah.
And so it was, I actually, the more I think about things is what I learn more sometimes than what was going on. Because at the time, the city was growing. We were just trying to address challenges. But definitely the passion was the big thing. That was huge for her.
That's great. So let's talk about Meridian, this town that you love and lead. So I think I don't think the tagline still is, it may not be, but live, work, play, kind of, it's this idea that this is a family-based community, second largest city in the state of Idaho. What's the population now?
A little bit over 140,000 by Compass estimates.
So 140,000 now. When you took over, or better question, what was it in like 2007 when you first started
It's
working?
about 70.
So
Doubled.
More than doubled in that time. And I think you're the CEO of the second largest city in the state. I mean, that's kind of what it is. And you're balancing fire and police and parks and utilities and battling with ACHD and everything else that goes with the job. But talk a little bit about this place you love and kind of how you've seen it grow and about the people.
Yeah, well, and people's a great way to start because, we just had one of our longtime council members, Joe Borton, step down. And we did a little event for him yesterday, and he really gathered us in a circle and had us look at one another and talked about this is the why. It's the people that are around you. This is the reason why we do the things that we do. And the circle can get bigger and bigger and expand out into the community. But Meridian long before I came, had this family focused. That was really what it was. Premier community in which to live, work, and raise your family. And when I ran, I wanted to make sure we ensure we remain a safe community built around families. Interesting thing is, from the time I've been there to now, that the family dynamic in Meridian has changed greatly. Number of kids in the household has declined. People are aging, but they're not leaving, or the people that are moving here aren't necessarily coming with kids. So even the definition of family now, it used to just be mom, dad, and kids. Now it's grandma and grandpa
Yeah.
with mom and dad and kids, and
And will continue to be more so as things tighten, right? And aging population.
exactly. So this community is growing and evolving, and that's the best way I can describe it, because it is, we don't have the legacy families, the legacy businesses, the legacies that have been around for 150 years, that have been part of everything, because we've grown, new people, new businesses, and we're really continuing to evolve about who we are. And I think that's one of the amazing things about Meridian, is the change has been constant, and I think the change has been positive to what people want out of a city. And that starts with a concept when you're knocking doors, and the two things that you're going to hear, maybe three, when you knock on doors. You're going to hear about transportation challenges. You're going to hear about school challenges. You're going to hear about growth in generally. And then when you say, well, where do you work? Well, I work over here, and I love that fact. And that wasn't there 3 years ago. It's like, where do they like to go out to dinner? Well, those restaurants weren't there 5 years ago. And so the growth has the positive and the negative sides of it. That you can't get the commercial without the people.
Yeah, and I'm a developer, and that's what we do for our thing. And my first project was Portico by the hospital started in '04. In fact, we're kind of celebrating our 20th anniversary of starting here. We started in Meridian, but the concept of growing smartly and taking advantage of existing infrastructure, existing roads, and bringing services and employment closer to where people live, that's just the way to do it, right? And this idea of sprawl it just puts strain and stress on every resource, right? So if you already have a police station, a fire station, sewer, water, power, roads in an area, that's where you should be going. And I think you have a master plan that's been there for a long time. It's been basically the compass to say, hey, this is how we want to see the city grow. And a lot of time and effort go into that. And I think as you've seen your corridors change and it grow, I think you ought to be very proud of yourselves, because you could predict something like this happening, but I don't think we predicted it would happen this quickly, right? I mean, if you go back to '07 when you started, it has been a ride. I mean, it has been, and Meridian's been at the center of that as either the fastest growing, or is it the fastest growing still? I know during a period it's fastest growing city in Idaho, and
Maybe we might be the fastest in terms of total numbers of things, but not in percentage.
Okay. But it's been this rocket ship, right? That's taken off, and lots of stresses and strains. But I think you look at how you're doing it. It's been pretty dang good.
Yeah, we really, one of the things we started off, I guess 3 years ago, we really try to work with the development community. Say, here's where we really want to see investment on your part, because that's where we're investing. But they were already kind of there.
Yeah.
And our partners were already planning on going there, so it made it easy. But just saying it out loud and reiterating it to people, so that they had the expectations that, we don't want to grow everywhere. We can't grow everywhere. The services cost too much to provide. Police officers, you start seeing how far they have to drive to go places, and so it is just about responsible growth. And really, infill is the best, because it connects those services. It fills in the holes where gaps in Meridian often are. But even if it's not that direct infill, the adjacent in the right places. So we only need to look at maybe putting in one piece of infrastructure in one place, and not 3 pieces of infrastructure in 3 different places. And as you know, in the development community, sewer's king.
No.
No sewer, no development. And that's, the McDermott trunk line is probably the key to that next phase of growth. And we've been holding that back. It's got a huge cost, but it also is helping us not grow in areas where we aren't prepared to grow, because we need to let some of the other things develop appropriately in our city. And those are tough to make those decisions, but that's part of leadership.
When you think about Highway 16, The first part of that was built over the river years ago, and everyone would ask the question, when is that coming? When is it coming? They had it planned for a long time, but my goodness, that's the one of this last little boom we've had. That road going in as quickly as it had is going to be a big game changer, right? It kind of sits right on the edge of Meridian and Nampa. It's kind of the next infill area for you, and it will really connect North and South Meridian in a real way. And I think that's, I mean, you think about kind of your core, south of I-84, north of I-84, and kind of everything to the east of 16. It's going to fill in. I mean, it's happening right before our eyes. You look at what's happened down in Chinden and Linder, and I mean, talk a little bit about these areas that are just so hot because people want to live there. They got great places to live, great options of a way to live, and what I'm most proud of through your leadership is you did have these employment areas. You look at 10 Mile where, there's 6,000 daytime employees there that aren't traveling to Boise. They're getting off the roads. They're able to live closer to where they work. That's really smart growth. Even here, where as we sit today on Eagle Road, this allows people to work where they live. Well, that wasn't something we were thinking about, a decade ago. Everyone was getting in their car and traveling a long ways to get to an office and work. And so it's been interesting to watch it happen. It needed to happen. Just didn't think it would happen this quickly, but there was a pent-up demand for that.
Yeah, well, the best thing we can do is disrupt our transportation network pattern with getting people using all roads in all directions at all times, and that means putting employment areas where people got to go the opposite way. At least if we just wanted to focus on how do we not build more lanes for starters, you got to put employment in the other direction for people, and I think that's been part of Meridian's strategy for a long time. I know definitely under Mayor Tammy, it was like we wanted to have more jobs than we had people for those jobs, and we reached that goal a couple years ago. Now, are they going to be the law firms that are in downtown Boise? Are they going to relocate? I don't know, but if we can see some more of those type of jobs come out to this area, then we definitely achieve those type of goals.
Well, I'll tell you what we see, because you work with these big companies, and they may be relocating here, or they may be just growing here. And what most of them do, they're sophisticated, is they'll do a survey of their employees. They'll say, hey, we want to see drive times of our employees. We want to make this convenient for our employees, because what the commodity is now for a business is your people. You're competing for recruitment and retention of employees. And what they find almost every time is, hey, if we go right here, which is Meridian, it's going to be the best for our people, because then they can work and live closer to where they work. It helps them with drive times. Which helps their family, which helps with their costs of transportation. So all of that is, I think you were really well positioned being right in the middle of the valley with the values you had and the way you kind of set up. There's also, I want to get to this, you look at your parks and the way you've taken care of making it a community that feels like a community, and you want to raise your family. And talk a little bit about that, because it's not just location and planning. It's also those different amenities that you've put into a place you really want to raise your family.
Yeah, and Meridian's been blessed in that regard, because there's been a lot of donations to Meridian as we've grown. Whether it's from the development community to help get the land for park, or the Kleiner family for them selling their property and putting it all back into the community what they made. But I think it starts with our employees, and I think that's the key thing for Meridian is, our parks are the way they are because our employees have a culture and they care about it. And they take pride in what they do and how they do it and what they're providing, and that's the most visible place of the city for many of the community is the parks. Not a lot of people go to the police and fire station. You go to the parks, and that's how you feel about your community in a lot of ways. So taking pride in that quality of life aspect is very important. And obviously traditionally with the families and the sports, parks are where people grew up with their kids. And so the city's done a phenomenal job over the years of making those investments, keeping them high quality. I remember a time a couple years, when we were in that recession, where people started playing around, like, well, maybe we don't mow as often, or maybe we don't weed as much. And the other communities that took that approach, their communities didn't like it. Yeah. Because it showcases your community in a way that you really can't do in other aspects. And so, hats off to the team and what they do and that quality of life component, but also goes to our schools. Mayor Tammy blamed the school district for the growth. Phenomenal school district that offered a lot of stuff, and had a large geographic footprint. And that kind of goes to the northwest area as well with the Waihee High School. What we've seen in Meridian is when a new school goes in, development comes, it follows. People want to be in the West Ada School District because of what it can offer, the variety of things that people have access to. And the schools are new. They've got great elements. And even when they went back and redid Meridian High and updated it to that level, that standard that people have, that's what parents want for their kids. You know, they want that feeling and that opportunity. And so between parks and schools and kids and family, that really defines that quality of space and place.
You know, you just brought something up that we probably don't talk about enough is the Meridian School District, West Ada, now has had some tremendous leadership, and they also provide so many options, right? If you're a family in West Ada, you have your traditional schools, which are fantastic, and then they've also got, you think of their campus they have and the innovation they did with Idaho State University on that building, and now they have the fine arts deal. They've got medical options. So if you're at Renaissance High School, you got so many options for your kids to go through. They do a really good job. And so, you know, you check the box. Crime, really low.
Right.
Police, safe, right? Parks, schools. You're checking all the boxes for people that want to raise a family in Idaho, and it makes it very attractive for people. Tell me a little bit about your budget's got to be. What is your budget now? Your total budget in Meridian?
Well, the budget fluctuates, and capital drives the budget. You know, carry forwards in that context. You know, so it varies greatly. I think we were around 200 million this last year. But a lot of that was carry forward. You know, and that's enterprise and general fund combined. They're very different in that context. So it's one of the misnomers that people say. Well, look, your budget grew or changed so much. It's like, well, we couldn't complete that project on time, and law requires that we carry that money forward. But we try to run pretty lean as best we can, especially in the general fund and in the enterprise, which is the water and sewer.
Yep.
For people. But
so you got your own water and sewer company you kind of run and have to keep up with growth. You have police, fire, parks. Those are probably the big budget items, right?
Yeah, community development falls right in there, but that's those are the big public-facing ones in that context, and all the admin work behind as well. And if I can just give a plug for my own blog or my own podcast that I do, because we do a City 101, which kind of tells people about their city, about each of these departments. And,
absolutely. Where do people find that?
Just go to the City of Meridian. It's called My Meridian Podcast, and you can just Google that on our website, and you can find it. But it really tries to inform people about everything we do, from the financial part to the services that are on the street in our community. But yeah, that's a long answer to the budget, but yes.
That's fantastic. What are some of the exciting things coming up in Meridian in the coming years that you're looking at? What are some other things that listeners may not know? What's coming up?
As far as what's coming up, I think we're really kind of laying that vision for next. We just got done completing a lot of great things, in my viewpoint, with a couple fire stations, a police station, element of our parks. People see the businesses that are coming, In and Out opened, Chills is opening up, so we've had a lot of really good stuff. So I think we're gonna be in a little bit of a quiet period over the next year as we kind of lay the groundwork for what's next. Both for the city as well as what we hear from the community. I think that there's going to be some great development projects coming forward, stuff that's going to be probably knock some people's socks off over time. But with the interest rates, people I think are taking their time going through that. I'm personally excited about where we're going to be with transportation projects, Linder Road overpass. That's continuing to move forward. So we look forward to seeing that move forward, and that's really going to help 10 Mile.
I think people really worry about transportation. In fact, we'll talk a little bit more about that. But just so we spend a little time on it, there is a new overpass going on Linder, which is going to extend Linder Road across over the freeway down to South Meridian.
Correct.
Incredible. That'll take a lot of the pressure off 10 Mile and Eagle Road.
Well, probably more Meridian and 10 Mile, not Eagle. Yep. But between that and Highway 16, I think it's going to be a game changer for how 10 Mile operates for the community, because it's operated a lot like a highway. Yeah. Because of the bridge to nowhere that was so dubbed by Mayor Tammy with Highway 16. But with the Highway 16 extension, it's really going to change the transportation in a big way. But Linder is a personal is the city's number one priority
Yeah.
for a road improvement project, and it not only is going to alleviate traffic, but it connects the community one more place, because the interstate is such a dividing line.
Yeah.
But in this case, you're going to have a fire station right on the other side of Linder that can get over, and it helps fill in gaps of coverage and resource. And so we're really excited about that specific project. Other things I think we'll be talking about a little bit is working towards what's the future of ISU's campus look like in Meridian, and how we make that the healthcare corridor for the state of Idaho.
Let's talk a little bit about that. I've been involved with that for, gosh, it's got to be 25 years now. It's been a long time. When I first came here, I started in the 90s. I started helping them with that. But back in the day, they had bought that the building there and with them, and at the time it was
JBL.
And it was Clark, Superintendent Linda Clark,
Yep.
and Bessie Katsulamidis. They put the deal together with ISU and built that building, and really started what ended up being all of the health science classes and PA classes, pharmacy. Shoot, there's probably a list, though. I'm going to miss a
I
lot.
got to mention SLP, since my wife got her graduate program
There you go.
in that field.
Yeah, right there in Meridian. And then when ICOM came, it was a natural fit to be right next to that. So you have ICOM there now. So really cool things happening there when we talk in medical education, which in the state is a ginormous need, getting more and more every day, plays a huge role. And the city of Meridian has been involved right from the very beginning with trying to help augment that and make that a really special place, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And St. Luke's has the busiest emergency room in the state, 1 mile over. They've got a property to do a whole lot of stuff on there if they ever decide to. And then we have the education component 1 mile away. And so in a lot of ways, it's about how do we connect the two. Some of that's going to be land use planning, but it's more than just land use planning. It's making a emotional connection between the two, so that people understand what is there. And healthcare has been driving the economy in a lot of ways nationwide, and it's going to continue to do that. So seeing that investment, helping our partners make those investments, go back to our original conversation about jobs. You put that in the center of the valley, you create those high-paying jobs, and you get people moving different directions. But ISU's got a plan and a vision for their property right there. They purchased property to the north that people may not realize, and we want to work with them to make sure that they have plenty of property to grow the campus to what it needs to be long-term for the state. And I don't think that's truly defined in what is the long-term solutions. You always hear people talk about, should the WWAMI program stay, should it not? Do we need another medical school, even though we got one already?
Medical school without walls, the whole thing. It's been 20 years of kind of multiple plans, right?
Yeah, it is. And I'm not trying to interject into what's the right approach, but I want to make sure that we are focused on that at the city, so we help the state have the resources it needs for its people, because we're all living longer. We're going to need more care, but yet we also see this bubble of people in this country. So how are we going to have the resources we need here in this valley if we want to enjoy this great quality of life we've created?
It seems like that bubble of people have been coming for a long time, and it's coming, right? It really is. You just, and the older I get, I feel like I'm part of that bubble in a lot of ways, because it's actually still my folks that are still coming, but we're going to have a lot of healthcare needs in this country, including Treasure Valley here, with a lot of care needed to be given. And we've had a lot of medical advancements, but there's nothing that really places care and the need for that patient, provider interaction. And I love the fact that you're going to be right in the middle of that. That's really, really, really needed by our state. That's great. The other thing about transportation, thank you for Dave Miles, your chief of staff. Mm-hmm. Has been coming to all of our Idaho 2040 meetings, but we're really hopeful that public transportation, buses, basically, and eventually heavy rail. We had Elaine Clegg on last week on our podcast, and it was really good. I've had so many people call and say, "Oh my gosh, I didn't know that there was plans," and I'm so glad there are, because it's going to be a problem, right? I mean, there's just not enough right away. There's just a lot of cars right now, and that public transportation will be part of it. Do you have any comments on what public transportation can do?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a lot of comments and thoughts on the process. The only question is, like, what's going to get here first.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. I talked a little bit this in my state of city last year, and Meridian doesn't have a lot of density except for on two corridors. Overland and Franklin, but that was by design. That's where we have our multifamily. That's where, whether it's a train or a bus system, that's where you're going to pick up the people. Where the rest of the city doesn't. You're not putting a bus down into Tuscany
Right.
and those areas. So I've really talked about, how is technology going to help us long term, and our autonomous vehicle is going to help us get point to point, picking up people in subdivisions who don't have cars and get them to, the major spines and move around as compared to a 40 passenger bus. So on one hand, that's where I kind of am looking towards the future of for Meridian. But the corridor itself, I think everyone recognizes, and I know Compass did a study, but it seemed pretty obvious that the rail corridor is the place where long-term movement of people east and west is going to happen. What we also know is this is a state issue. It's bigger than Boise, it's bigger than Meridian, it's bigger than all the cities, it's bigger than the two counties. It's a state issue in the context of we need the state to be there to help lead us to have the conversations with the railroad partners so that we can both deliver commerce needs, transportation needs, whatever that looks like, just so we're planning for it. And that's been something that I've really advocated for. Yeah, I don't know if it's trains, I don't know if it's planes, I don't know if it's automobiles or something else.
I think you've hit, those are all really great points. I do think, I don't know when we're going to have planes or automobiles that are picking us up in our subdivisions, but I can tell you there's enough apartments that have come to Meridian that are on Franklin and Overland. I think it's a really good goal to have buses every 15 minutes to get those people to work, because it's just so expensive now to live, and there's just so many families right on that edge that I think it could make a tremendous difference. But hopefully, I really appreciate again Dave coming, and I think we're making some progress at least to try to get they say a dream without funding is
Right.
not going to happen, and that's what it's been so far. And I think we need to focus on how does this get funded in a way that we can respond and we don't become gridlocked, like a lot of cities have done that.
Right, and that's where the last place I was going to go was the funding. Is again, it goes back to the legislature's got to provide a mechanism for people to consider it.
Yeah.
Because I can tell you this: the city of Meridian's budget cannot accommodate a 15-minute schedule that we're funding buses, unless we sell our police department and our fire department.
Yeah.
That's how expensive public transportation can be when it competes. So we will need the legislature's help to find a way that we want to make this happen in Idaho.
Yeah, amen. That's great. Challenges. Any challenges out there for Meridian or folks listening to this?
Yeah, I think the challenge is one that really kind of popped up in COVID, and I think remains. Coming together as a city, as people. I've tried to stay focused on, if I create division within my community, it's the employees that feel it. It's the police officers. It's the firefighters. There's still a lot of division on a lot of different issues, and I don't know how we're going to overcome the division. But I encourage people to have the conversations, because I think that's one of the important parts about it, is the more we don't have to fight with one another, we can focus on the real issues that are out there. And I think the challenge that exists out there with our mobile devices and our kids and our adults, my family's not immune, where I sometimes look over and I see poor people looking down and not talking to one another. And how do we re-engage our families? How do we re-engage our kids with one another in ways? I think those are going to be some of the big picture things that we're going to have to figure out if we want to have a healthy community, top to bottom.
Yeah. Well, that idea of engagement and just the change in the way we interact and the way we socialize and the way, what devices have done to all. I don't think, every time there's been a big major change in technology in the country, it's usually been slow. If you think of the automobile, you think of the Industrial Revolution, all these things that are big changes, refrigeration, if you read back through history. But with technology, it was quick and it was adopted so quickly. I think it's got a lot of us on our heels saying, okay, how do we figure this out? Because, and I do think the civility, it makes it so easy to just say things or do things that are emotional. Whereas if you're with somebody and they're a person to you, you connect in a different way when it's one-on-one than you do if you're railing on a social media app.
And you just right use the perfect word, connection. You know, as a physician, you know the human touch,
Yeah.
you know, the connection that occurs, and you know, while we can't always touch each other physically, but emotionally and just that empathy that
Yeah.
exists through connection, that can change communities. And I think we got to find a way to get back to that.
It's you just brought that up, and I was thinking back to the days. So long time in the ER. In fact, the Meridian ER, the busiest one in the state, was where I was for a long time. Did night shifts, but early on, I had a mentor that was one of my good friends in the ER, and he grabbed me because you're busy, right? You're running, and I remember him sitting me down and saying, "Hey, listen, I'm gonna give you some advice, and you need to do this. Pull the chair up to the bed and sit down and touch the patient on the hand and just say, hey, how can I help you?" And that's 80% of your job is connecting and being there for someone, right? And I never forgot that, and that's true because you go in, you'd sit down. It's the same time you were there, but if I can feel that, hey, you're here to help me, boy, I start off in a really good spot. And it just was a powerful, and that's in the ER, but it's really every part of our life. Mm-hmm. Whether you're sitting with your mayor, who I know how much you love and care for these people, how can I connect with you, and how can we come together and find solutions for each other? Beautiful message.
Yeah. So that's something I know that we'll be talking more about and working on over the next several years.
I think we're kind of wrapping up. Last word I would like to ask you, because I know you've got a big heart for this place. You're raising your family in the city that you're the mayor of, the heritage that's here, and talk a little bit about how much you love the people of Meridian and serving them.
Well, it's a unique place, and I think this goes beyond Meridian. And I think it's Idaho. I love Idaho first and foremost, you know, through and through. But it's continued in Meridian. Even all the new people who've moved here, people have adopted our philosophy of, you know, waving people through, opening doors for one another, saying hello, smiling, interacting for the most part. And you know that just to be mayor of a community that has that ability to do that, to work together, the volunteers side by side one another, those are the things that just, you know, you look out and you see the work that everyone else is doing, and that you get to do my small part in that, whether it's in words of encouragement, which is a lot of what people ask for their mayor, is they want someone that's going to show up and say thank you and great job in that context, and to be part of seeing what other people are doing. That's what really, like, at least drives me to try to justify my time going out away from my family to help support others doing the work. So we do live in a great state, a great part of the state, a wonderful city with wonderful people, and I'm just humbled to be in this position.
Well, amen to that. Thanks so much for coming on, Mayor. This has been great. Thanks for your leadership and your service, and keep it up. Thank you.
Will do. Thanks, Tommy.